The courtroom air was thick, so heavy I could barely breathe. My stepmom, Sharon, was on the witness stand, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I'm just so worried about Lily," she said, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. "Her father's passing. It's been too much for her. She's not in her right mind." I felt a hot flash of anger. Not in my right mind. This was her master plan. After my dad died, she'd been systematically trying to prove I was incompetent, all to get her hands on the inheritance he left solely to me. My lawyer, a young guy named Ben, who seemed perpetually frazzled, had warned me this would be her strategy. "She paint you as unstable. Lily, we just have to stay calm and present the facts." But hearing her spin this web of lies, twisting my grief into a sign of insanity, was harder than I ever imagined. She told the court I was hearing voices, that I'd been seen talking to myself, that I'd misplaced important documents. The talking to myself. I was rehearsing what I'd say in court. The misplaced documents. She had stolen them. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at the judge. He was an older man, with a stern face and wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. He had been listening intently, his expression unreadable. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. How could I prove my sanity when Sharon was so convincingly playing the part of a caring, heartbroken widow? She was a predator in sheep's clothing, and I was her prey. She claims her father visits her in her dreams and gives her instructions, Sharon continued, her voice trembling with mock fear. "She's lost touch with reality, Your Honor. She needs professional help, not control of a multi-million-dollar estate." The room was silent. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me, full of pity and suspicion. My own aunt, my dad's sister, looked at me with worried eyes from the gallery. Even she was starting to believe Sharon's lies. Ben stood up to cross-examine her. He did his best, poking holes in her story. But Sharon was smooth. She had an answer for everything. For every lie he exposed, she wove to more. It was like trying to fight a hydra. I felt my hope dwindling with every passing second. This was it. I was going to lose everything my dad had worked his whole life for, all because of this manipulative woman he had the misfortune of marrying late in life. The judge cleared his throat, and the sound echoed in the silent courtroom. "Ms. Evans," he said, addressing Sharon. "You've painted a very concerning picture of your stepdaughter." Sharon nodded, pressing the tissue to her eye again. "I only want what's best for her, Your Honor." Then the judge turned his gaze to me. It was intense, piercing. I felt like he was looking right through me. My hands were shaking, and I clasped them in my lap to keep them still. I was just a 22-year-old girl, and I felt like a cornered animal. My dad had always told me I was strong, that I had a fire in me. But in that moment, I felt like that fire was about to be extinguished for good. The judge held my gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, he did something unexpected. He took off his glasses. He polished them with a cloth from his pocket, his movements deliberate and slow. When he looked up again, his eyes were different, softer, and familiar. A jolt went through me. Where had I seen those eyes before? He leaned forward, placing his elbows on the bench. "Ms. Evans," he began, his voice low but carrying a new authority that silenced the room. "You mentioned that Lily's father was a man named Robert Miller. Is that correct?" Sharon looked a bit confused by the question. "Yes, Your Honor. Robert Miller. A wonderful man." The judge nodded slowly. "I knew a Robert Miller. We called him Bob, a great guy. Had a real passion for classic cars and a terrible golf swing." My jaw dropped. That was my dad. Everyone called him Bob. He spent every weekend in the garage with his vintage Mustang, and his golf game was legendary for all the wrong reasons. The judge looked directly at me now, and a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. He used to bring his daughter to the community center I volunteered at. A little girl with pigtails who was obsessed with building the tallest block tower in the room. She called him Daddy-O. Tears sprang to my eyes. That was me. That was my nickname for him. No one else knew that. It was our special thing. My dad, and the man I knew as Mr. Henderson, the kind volunteer who always saved the best blue blocks for me. The judge put his glasses back on, stern demeanor returned, but his eyes held a glint of warmth that hadn't been there before. He was Judge Henderson. "Lily," he said, his voice gentle. "Your father used to tell me you were the smartest, most resilient kid he'd ever met. He said you had a spine of steel, just like your grandmother." He then turned his gaze, now cold as ice, back to Sharon. "Ms. Evans, you claim Lily is unstable. Yet, the evidence presented by her counsel shows a meticulous record of your financial withdrawals from your joint account with Robert, starting the day after he received his terminal diagnosis. It also shows emails from you to a real estate agent in another country, discussing the purchase of a villa purchase you intended to make the week after this competency hearing was scheduled to conclude. Sharon's face went from pale to ghostly white. She started to stammer, I don't know what you're talking about. The judge slammed his gavel down, the sound cracking through the tension like a whip. Do not lie in my courtroom, Ms. Evans. Perjury is a serious offense. He held up a stack of papers. This is a sworn affidavit from your former personal assistant, detailing how you instructed her to hide your husband's personal documents and medication to create the illusion of his forgetfulness and Lily's instability. It seems to me, the only person here who has lost touch with reality is you. The entire courtroom erupted in hushed whispers. My aunt, who had been looking at me with doubt, was now staring at Sharon with pure fury. I felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost knocked me over. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't losing my mind. The truth was finally out. Judge Henderson looked at Sharon, his face a mask of disappointment. Your attempt to defraud this court and manipulate your stepdaughter during her time of grief is, frankly, one of the most despicable acts I have seen in my 20 years on this bench. He turned to a bailiff. Take Ms. Evans into custody. She will be facing charges of perjury, fraud, and elder abuse, for a start. As the bailiffs led a sputtering, protesting Sharon away, the judge looked at me. Lily, he said, his voice soft again. I am so sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man. He would be so incredibly proud of the strong woman you've become. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The world seemed brighter, the air lighter. It wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about my dad's legacy, and my own sanity. In the darkest moment, when I thought all was lost, a memory from the past, a kind man who saved the blue blocks for a little girl, came back to save me. My dad had always told me that good people find each other. Turns out, he was right. And his memory, his love, was still protecting me, even after he was gone. Thank you so much for watching. It just goes to show you that sometimes, help comes from the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next video.